Did a single court appearance in Manhattan just signal the final countdown for a major world power? Imagine the horror of realizing elite foreign operatives were already inside your country, mapping out your family's front door. Most news outlets are focused on the surface-level politics, but the real story is much darker and far more explosive. Before we dive into the secret documents that just forced the Pentagon into high alert, I need you to do something. If you want to see the world as it actually is, hit that subscribe button right now. Like this video to help us push this analysis past the algorithms and get the truth out. On June 1st, 2026, 32-year-old Mohammad Baqer Saad Dawood Al-Saadi stood in a Manhattan courtroom, and the air in Washington went cold. Al-Saadi was a senior commander from Kata'ib Hezbollah, trained by the IRGC to strike the heart of American power. The evidence recovered was chilling, detailed blueprints of Ivanka Trump's private residence in Florida. This wasn't a random threat, but a calculated move of revenge meant to settle a blood feud that began 6 years ago. Al-Saadi explicitly told his handlers he wanted to burn down the house of Trump, mirroring the 2020 strike that killed Qasem Soleimani. Let that sink in. This was the long-awaited eye for an eye that the world hoped would never come. While the media focused on the courtroom drama, the U.S. military posture shifted into a state of total lethal readiness. Operation Epic Fury had already been raging for 100 days, but between May 22nd and 25th, something changed at the highest levels. President Trump abruptly canceled his trip to the Bahamas, a move that sent shockwaves through the intelligence community. At the Pentagon, leave was canceled for service members across every major installation in the continental United States. Live strike packages targeting Iranian military infrastructure were no longer theories. They were active options on the Resolute desk. This is the part that most coverage gets wrong. Washington isn't just reacting to a plot, they are seizing a moment of total leverage. The 2026 Iran war has reached a point of no return where the Iranian regime is looking at the barrel of a loaded gun. Tehran relied on proxies for years, but now the IRGC's shadow games have brought the fight directly to their own doorstep. Stop and think about the strategic desperation required for a regime to attempt an assassination of this magnitude on U.S. soil. This gamble backfired, exposing secret networks and giving the U.S. the justification it needed for a final move. To understand the ferocity of this moment, we have to look back to the drone strike at Baghdad International Airport in 2020. That strike didn't just eliminate Qasem Soleimani, it shattered the Iranian myth of untouchability and set a clock ticking in Tehran. Al-Saadi's extradition from Turkey in late May was the final piece of a puzzle that U.S. intelligence had been tracking for months. The Manhattan courtroom on June 1st wasn't just a legal proceeding. It was a public exposure of the IRGC's ultimate failure. The documents revealed blueprints not just of doors and windows, but of the daily movements of the former First Family. This was an act of war hiding in a criminal file, and it has triggered a sequence of events that cannot be stopped. But as the missiles spin up now, it is the empty vaults in Tehran that truly signal the total end of the road for this regime. Since the blockade tightened on April 13th, the Islamic Republic hasn't just been losing a war, it is bleeding out from its carotid artery. Every time the sun sets over the Persian Gulf, another $435 million vanishes from their national treasury. Let that figure sink in for a moment. We aren't talking about projected losses or long-term economic shifts. This is a cold, hard daily drain of nearly $500 million in liquid sovereign wealth. The world's mainstream media is focused on the carrier groups and the missile batteries, but the real kill shot is being delivered by the silence at the loading docks. Iranian oil exports have plummeted by a staggering 84% in the last month alone. Before we dig into why their storage facilities are at the breaking point, you need to understand why this intel matters. If you want to stay ahead of the curve on global flashpoints, subscribe to World Decoded right now. The tactical reality on the ground is even more dire than the spreadsheets suggest. By late May, the massive storage tanks at Karg Island reached their absolute physical limit. When you can't ship the oil and you have nowhere left to put it, you're forced to shut down the wells themselves. This isn't just a temporary pause. It is a mechanical nightmare that can permanently damage the subterranean reservoirs. The regime was forced to slash production by 800,000 barrels per day just to keep the infrastructure from exploding under the pressure. This is the definition of an economic hollow-out that no propaganda can hide. While the IRGC screams defiance into the cameras, their accountants are watching $20 billion of sovereign wealth simply evaporate into the desert air. The clock isn't ticking in years or months anymore, it's ticking in hours. Stop and think about what that means for a nation already struggling with internal dissent. When the money for the subsidies and the proxy wars dries up, the walls of the regime begin to crack from the inside. I want you to do something for me, right now. To prove you're paying attention to the mechanics of power, comment the word blockade below. It helps the algorithm realize this analysis is essential. Most analysts miss the significance of the contradiction incident in their state communications. While one department was shouting about military resistance, the foreign ministry was quietly signaling a desperate need for a way out. That rift isn't just a PR blunder. It is the sound of a government realizing their primary source of power has been neutralized. They are effectively flying a jet with both engines on fire and the fuel tanks bone dry. The U.S. Navy didn't just stop the physical tankers, they stopped the heartbeat of the Iranian state. This isn't a siege in the medieval sense, but a high-tech strangulation of the 21st century variety. The 2026 Iran war has proven that you don't need to level a city to bring a regime to its knees. You just need to control the ledger and wait for the math to do the work for you. By the time the New Delhi BRICS meeting convened, the smell of economic death was in the air. Even Iran's supposed allies could see the writing on the wall and began looking for the nearest exit. Beijing, which has long acted as Tehran's primary diplomatic shield, began to look at those empty Karg Island tanks and the $435 million daily burn rate. They realized that a dead partner is of no use to them. This pressure forced a choice that was previously unthinkable. They had to choose between their nuclear pride and survival. Behind closed doors, officials began drafting a surrender that looks more like a total capitulation than a peace deal. The leaked Memorandum of Understanding, or MOU, isn't just a ceasefire proposal. It is a document of absolute desperation. Even Beijing, once Tehran's most reliable economic shield, has effectively pulled the plug. Chinese leadership privately signaled to Washington that the global energy market can no longer withstand the closure of the Strait of Hormuz. For Beijing, stable oil flow outweighs any loyalty to Tehran. This abandonment rippled through the BRICS bloc during the recent summit in New Delhi. Not a single member from India to Brazil was willing to issue a unified condemnation of the blockade. Inside the leaked MOU, one clause stands out as the ultimate red line crossed. Iran has reportedly offered a written commitment to surrender 90% of its highly enriched uranium stockpile to authorities. This isn't just a temporary freeze, it's a total dismantling of nuclear ambition. The regime is trading its most powerful leverage for a $25 billion lifeline to prevent immediate bankruptcy. The Treasury is currently hemorrhaging $435 million every single day that the blockade remains in place. At this rate, the state's financial skeleton will be picked clean before the summer even peaks. This desperation has sparked a massive internal fracture within the Iranian leadership. On one side, the foreign ministry is signaling a diplomatic retreat to avoid total state collapse and mass starvation. On the other side, IRGC hardliners are bracing for a fight, viewing uranium surrender as treason. A single social media post from the foreign ministry recently exposed this internal chaos. The post contained two diametrically opposed messages, one promising eternal resistance, and the other signaling a willingness to negotiate. It was a rare glimpse into a regime losing its grip. This panic is compounded by the failed assassination plot against Ivanka Trump. Mohammad Baqer, Saad, Dawood Al-Saadi, the Iraqi national behind the blueprints, is now in federal custody in Manhattan. Al-Saadi explicitly stated he wanted to burn down the house of Trump in revenge for Soleimani. His capture gave Washington the leverage to demand a total and final Iranian capitulation. Note the timing of President Trump abruptly canceling his attendance at his son's wedding. This signaled that strike packages were being reviewed as live options in the Situation Room. Stop and think about what this means for the future of global power. Comment the word strategy below if you think the U.S. should hold the line until the regime collapses. Here's the part that most coverage gets wrong. This deal isn't about peace. It's about a regime that realized its proxy networks could no longer protect its empty treasury. Operational status reports confirm that Iranian oil exports plummeted by 84% last month. Storage at Karg Island has reached capacity, forcing a production cut of 800,000 barrels per day. But if the regime accepts this flawed surrender, what happens to the IRGC hardliners who feel betrayed? Does this deal prevent a war, or does it simply delay a violent explosion? The world is watching to see if this MOU is signed, or if it's the final spark for a larger fire. For World Decoded, we'll track every move before the headlines break. If you want to stay ahead of the curve on global conflict, hit subscribe right now. Like this video to tell the algorithm that this deep geopolitical analysis actually matters. The pieces are moving faster than ever. Stay sharp, and we will see you in the next one.